hand has to be on their hip or whatever the case might be. And so when you can find those offensive line coaches who are truly teachers, then I think that is really an area that can kind of help your team stand apart. And, kind of circling back to Oklahoma, you mentioned Alabama as a team that has also done a great job. It was, I think, no surprise, Oklahoma, Alabama, and Georgia, three of our favorite teams all throughout the year. We talked about it many times here on the Instinctive Scouting Podcast about just how productive those teams are and how they play kind of your or my kind of football, Scott. And so that to me is one of the reasons why I was, just thrilled to hear the Oklahoma won this award. Thrilled to recognize Bill Bedendell, who is the offensive line coach and the co-offensive coordinator for the Sooners. And they just really had some remarkable statistics. I mean, Oklahoma, we've talked a lot about the Big 12 defenses and things like that. I think it is easier to have statistical success against the Big 12 defenses. But Oklahoma, of course, is going to get their opportunity to show what they can do going against Alabama in the bowl game and perhaps more. But Oklahoma led the country in points per game. I mean, almost 50 points a game, 49.5 points per game. They led the country in yards per contest, 578 yards per game. And that's just insane. Just a remarkable numbers for them. And then, by the way, they had to replace two first-team all-conference starters in Eric Wren and Orlando Brown. And so anytime you have to replace those players, you have to replace the Heisman Trophy winning quarterback. You mentioned the fact that they lost their running back Rodney Anderson this year to injuries, and yet you still have that production. Really, to me, is a testament. And so I'm just going to go from left to right. The left tackle is a redshirt junior, Bobby Evans. I think all five of these guys that I'm going to mention for the seniors, by the way, I think have NFL futures. But left tackle, Bobby Evans, redshirt junior. The senior left guard, an Outland Trophy semifinalist, Ben Powers. Then redshirt freshman, center, Creed Humphrey, 11 starts as a redshirt freshman. Now, I should mention that there was a redshirt senior, Jonathan Alvarez, who also started a few games, but their primary starter at the center position was Creed Humphrey, again, a redshirt freshman. Senior right guard, Drew Samia, and then the redshirt junior right tackle, Cody Ford, who is a big, strong, fit guy. I think might project a little bit better inside at guard in the NFL. We'll talk about that a little bit more as we go forward, but again, just a tip of the cap to the University of Oklahoma, the Joe Moore Award, and as well as to Alabama and Georgia. I think there's a reason why we see that, obviously Alabama is the number one team in the country defending national champions, but Georgia, of course, national championship game a year ago, SEC champions a year ago, that we certainly know that they know how to run the football and pass protect as well. So again, just to me, one of the more exciting awards in all of college football, just because not very many people know about it.
Yeah, no, you're right. No, it's awesome. It's awesome for the university. It's awesome for the kids. And, as you're well aware, there's a lot of good football out there. But when you give an award to teammates combined, to me, that's so important because it's not about the individual; it's about the sum of the parts.
Well, exactly. It's about the sum of the parts, and it's about that the people who are voting for this award are oftentimes former offensive linemen themselves. I get a little bit angered by the fact that there's all these Heisman Trophy voters, there's all these voters for all these different awards, and it's all apparently based on statistics and the likelihood that they may have watched the game. And if I sound like a little bit bitter as a West Coast sports fan, you might be able to understand considering just how few awards nationally go to some of the players in the West Coast. But in this award, it's going to the entire offensive line, and so I really appreciate that. As I've mentioned before, I'm on the board of directors for the Pac-12's award. It's a very similar award, the Morris Trophy, for awarding the best offensive lineman and best defensive lineman in the conference. And while I'm on the board of directors, Scott, I don't get a vote. It's all about what the other Pac-12 players think. So the offensive linemen vote for the best defensive lineman, and the best defensive linemen vote for the best offensive lineman. And to me, that's what makes it a great award, is these are the players voting for their peers. And so they know who best is, who can really play, not just go off of statistics. And that to me is what the Joe Moore Award is all about as well. So let's kind of keep switching over and talking about some of these offensive linemen. So I know with your commitments to different NFL teams that you are working as a consultant, that you're going to be really hesitant to say, oh, this is my top-rated tackle or this is my top-rated guard. I completely understand that. So let's instead maybe focus a little bit on recent NFL players. And so if I was to ask you, who do you think are a couple of the top offensive tackles in the NFL in today's era? And then I was going to kind of ask you to think back a little bit to maybe some of the top tackles that you remember scouting, whether you drafted them or not, in college in the past as well.
Well, the thing about it is there's a lot of them. What I'll do is just go with units.
Okay.
Like we're just talking about, what you're talking about with Oklahoma.
Mm-hmm.
I think the Cowboys,
yeah,
when healthy. They're down 2 men now that are really good players.
Yep.
It's the best O-line in the NFL, hands down. But the one I want to throw out there, which is, I never saw it coming, but I've seen it now, is Indianapolis Colts.
Yeah.
Holy smokes. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
And the back's the back, and Mac was hurt for a while. Now he's back, and he had a good game the other day.
Yep.
But, Ballard's done a great job of getting that thing fixed. And that's the thing they've been lacking. Of course, you got a really good quarterback. There's no doubt about it. He's finally healthy, which is great.
Yep.
But, there's individually, there's a lot of tackles that are good players. There's ones that are average players, but the 4 guys to the left or to the right in the quarterback make them look better than they are.
Yep.
Look at Whitworth. He's still playing.
Yep.
And going to Pro Bowls. And the son of a gun. And he's stiff as a board.
Yeah.
But all of a sudden he just produces because he's got help around him. And he's got a back to help him. He's got a tight end to help him. And they win. And all of a sudden he's going to Pro Bowl again. I'm like, wow. But it's a very difficult situation if you don't have a good quarterback or a good running game, because then all of a sudden they blitz you, they stunt you nonstop, and then you got to be able to adjust back and forth, left and right, and it makes it tough, But I've been lucky enough to be around a Walter Jones,
yep.
Very very lucky to be around Joe Staley, guys like that where they just identify. It's impressive, and it's not easy to come by. Trent Williams, when he's healthy,
yep,
really good player. But it's there's multiple guys out there that are really good, but ones get identified are the ones where they have a quarterback and a running game, and then they have other 4 guys on the line with them, 5 guys at the time if the tight end's in line. That's how you produce, because now you're not panicking with, okay, he's coming this way. They're going to bring this linebacker around this way. They're going to bring the safety up here, and then they've got a running game. You can't do that. You got a good quarterback. You can't do that because you got man coverage, and you better be able to cover, because if not, it's a touchdown.
Well, exactly, and that's one of the reasons why, again, I'm such a big fan of that Joe Moore Award, is because there's no doubt. I mean, people were paying a lot more attention to Oklahoma's offensive line because their quarterback has won the Heisman Trophy 2 years in a row.
Yeah.
So they're definitely getting a lot of eyes that way, and I agree with you. I mean, there's, the reality is that Quentin Nelson, obviously the guard for Indianapolis, is getting a lot of credit for the turnaround there. Anthony Costanzo, the tackle, it was a first-round pick a few years back out of Boston College, has had a pretty nice year as well. So there's some talent there, but if Andrew Luck wasn't coming back from the injury, if T.Y. Hilton and those tight ends weren't making the plays, then I don't know that a lot of people would be paying attention to what the Indianapolis Colts are doing. But because they're all playing so well together, then yeah, it does make their offensive line look a lot better. And you gave a great example of Andrew Whitworth before. When he played in Cincinnati, being drafted out of LSU all those years ago. I mean, I don't know that a lot of people appreciate that he was a pretty darn reliable player, not necessarily an elite athlete. This is not Walter Jones out there.
No, you're right.
But he can move people off the line of scrimmage, which was what fit with what Cincinnati looked to do in that division back in the day. With the Rams, Jared Goff gets the ball out of his hands so quickly, that it kind of protects Whitworth a little bit. And as you said, when you got a stud running back like Todd Gurley running behind you, it's a lot easier, to blow some people off the ball. So I thought Tyron Smith, the Dallas left tackle, as you mentioned, Dallas, I agree. I think you can make an argument that I'm going to kind of go through top tackles, top guard, top center. I think you can make an argument that Dallas's players should be, top it off the list on every single one of them. But again, with Tyron Smith, the durability issues that he's had, he's not the biggest of guys. He's gotten a lot bigger since he left USC, but he's still one of those guys who is just so athletic. He's so quick on his feet. Has that great length, but he's not the 330 pounder that you mentioned. Trent Williams. I mean, I would think of massive guys, Walter Jones, Jason Peters, the guy who are 330 plus, that are not only the dancing bears in pass protection, but they're mauling bears in the running game. And those are the types of tackles that I like. I'll mention a young player that I'm very high on, and this is not some sleeper. Taylor Lewan was a very high pick by the Tennessee Titans, but he just plays with the physicality that I love along the offensive line. And I think that he is a little bit of an underrated pass protector as well. I think he's a very solid left tackle, and just the fact that Marcus Mariota, his quarterback, of course, is just so darn athletic that it helps Luan in that way. But still, he has the pass protection and the run blocking that I'm looking for at the tackle position.
Yeah, no, I agree. And the thing about it is when I evaluate any offensive lineman, first and foremost, I want to see his feet. I want to see his flexibility.
Yep.
But then toughness.
Yep.
Toughness. Because, it's a severe battle in there every snap. And it's, you could have the best foot athlete, the most flexible guy. And if he's a finesse guy, which a lot of guys coming out of college nowadays are, because the systems they play in, makes me nervous. When you see a guy who can put his hands on somebody and move them, you see a hand can put his hands on somebody and control them and break their will, now you got something rolling. Tyron Smith, he's a nasty son of a gun.
Yep.
Nasty. You talk about Lewan, he's nasty. And those defensive players going in the game know it. They watch tape.
Yep.
They get the stuff from the pro scouts about, advanced scouting, be careful here, whatever. But, if you have the toughness to break a guy's will, you don't have to have the best feet.
Yeah.
I mean, you want them. You want them bigger in life, and you want length. You want to be able to slide and protect and all that. But you just keep fighting and fighting. Guys give up. It's both ways, offense and defensive line.
Yeah.
Depending who's the one that's going to survive. And you get to the point. I mean, if you're going to fight for 60 minutes, someone's giving up.
Yep.
Like a boxing match. Someone's going to be like, wow, I'm getting my tail whooped. And this guy just destroying me. But it's so important. The athleticism, the length, the size, don't get me wrong, is very important. But it's the mindset. It's the fact that, listen, you and I, one-on-one, let's see what happens.
Yeah.
You're going to get me a couple times, but I'm going to get you more times. And that's when you start finding good offensive linemen. That's when you start identifying what really it's about.
No, exactly. I mean, and you said it. You said two of the things that I look for as well. You said footwork and the flexibility. I have what I call my 5 Fs that I use for evaluating offensive linemen. I have 5 As that I use for quarterbacks. The quarterback side, their accuracy, anticipation, arm strength, athleticism, and then attitude. I want a quarterback that has a little bit of attitude to him. And so those are my 5 A's. For the offensive lineman, my 5 F's, and I get teased a little bit because fat is not one of them. But the 5 Fs are, I guess in a way it is, because one of them is fitness. I certainly want a guy who's at least in somewhat shape. But fitness, and the most important, footwork, flexibility, force, just raw power, and then finish. And that, to me, is like what you talked about with that football character and the want to and the grit. If you don't have that finishing mentality, then you're not the kind of offensive lineman I